Today I'd love to share with you a simple rule that's going to prevent 50% of your chess mistakes. I'm Grandmaster Igor Smirnov, and let's go ahead and get started. Let's have a look at this position. It is black to play. Temporarily white is up a piece, but black is going to get it back right on the next move by either capturing here or here. And these are the two options to choose from. What do you think about this? You may think about this for a couple seconds, and then we'll discuss this together. Let's first see what happens in the actual game, and after that we'll go back and I'll explain to you how to think in such positions so that you can find proper moves easily. Now, in the game, black decided to grab a bishop. Typically, a bishop is a little bit stronger than a knight. White realized that they need to save their knight, so they moved it away. Here, black saw that this pawn is hanging, so they decided to trade it off. And now it's time for black to think about something. They played rook c4, which looks pretty cool, attacking the knight, maybe threatening to go here, or black maybe wants to stack rooks along the c-file. White played queen e2 to support the knight and attack the rook, and here black blundered with rook to c8. The move that seems to make a lot of sense, but he blundered queen takes c4 tactics. And after this, rook takes, there's rook to b8, and it's a back rank checkmate. Within a few moves, black can sacrifice some material, but fundamentally it's going to be a checkmate. Now, at first seems like just some sudden disaster, and black overlooked that queen takes c4 tactics the back rank mate. But if I take it back, and what should have black played instead? Alright, let's say they're aware of this threat. What should you play instead? It's still not easy, actually, because if you guard the rook with your queen, there is another tactics, knight takes d6, with a fork to the rooks, but if the queen moves, that actually drops the rook on c4. So what else could black play instead? If the rook moves somewhere, let's say black decides, okay, I'm gonna go back to safety, rook to c8. White is still pretty active. They can go something like queen a6, put pressure to this pawn, threaten rook b7, and as you can see, it's very challenging to find proper moves for black, as there are so many threats and pitfalls all around. And what I would say is, you should not actually get to positions like that, when it's so hard for you to find right moves, and only Stockfish is capable of doing that. Let's come back all the way to the starting position of our example, and I'll tell you the golden rule of chess, which is so simple, but it's so effective. It says, you gotta go forward and push him back. That's it. Sounds trivial, but there is a lot of good depth into this rule. Now, what was wrong with taking on e3? Well, nothing wrong like at first sight, but fundamentally, you let this knight to move forward to the good square, and from here it indeed puts pressure to this pawn. Maybe in some lines down the future it can reroute to e6. Either way, like the knight on e4 is pretty good. On the next turn, black traded on f2. Again, it looks like there was nothing wrong with this move, but fundamentally it opens up the f-file for the rook. And now white controls both open files. He's got a strong centralized knight that is putting pressure, and no wonder black got in trouble, because thanks to white's active game, they have a number of threats possible. If instead we apply the right way of thinking, finding right moves becomes super easy and natural. We want to go forward, and rook takes c3 definitely helps us to move forward and activate our rook, and we push him back. This bishop has no squares where it could possibly go to in the forward direction, and therefore it has to go somewhere back. Whether it's d2 or c1 doesn't really matter. We push him back, and after that there is no danger for us anymore. Let's say he goes back to d2, and for simplicity let's even drop the rook all the way back to c8. Now in this position, just think about this. All his pieces are somewhere on the last ranks, and in a situation like that, it's very difficult for you to blunder anything. And I know some of you guys will be like, hold my beer. But nevertheless, at least you reduce the chances of blundering here. And life's good, you know, after that you can pick the plan you want to, you can put pressure here, maybe you want to push the e-pawn forward with e4, e3, maybe you want to try to attack on the king side. You've got plenty of things to do and very low risk of blundering anything. Now let's see how this general golden rule of chess applies to different positions so that you actually know how to apply it. Now, this position was white to move and they played knight to e5. How would you play here if you were black? Think about this for a couple seconds and then we'll discuss it together. Before that, let me take a moment to wish you a happy Father's Day. It's a nice holiday overall, and I feel that it's quite special for chess players because many of them were introduced to chess by their fathers. And nowadays I'm also teaching chess to my two little kids, and I wanted to do something special on this day. Therefore, if you ever wanted to get better at chess, right now is the best opportunity to do so. You can get any of my advanced premium courses at a massive discount, up to 75% off. On top of that, 5 lucky winners will get the Super Pack collection of my all premium courses all together worth over $1,600 for free. You can get all the details in the description below the video, and if you decide to speed up your chess progress, I'll be happy to help you as much as I can. Back to the game. This position actually occurred in a number of real games, and in the vast majority of them, if not in all of them, black took on e5. Now, by applying the golden rule of chess, you can already feel what's wrong with this move. We know that we should push our opponent back, and we do not want to let him go forward. Now, after knight takes e5, we actually do help our opponent to move his pawn forward and to attack you, pushing you back. So we kind of do right the opposite of the golden rule. And the knight has to go probably somewhere to the edge of the board, which is not very comfortable. It could go forward, but then after this trade on e4, you'd have to split your pawns and weaken them, which is also not very nice. Either way, you can see that black is not losing the game straight away, but it already puts pressure on black, making black's life harder after that. So the knight has to go. After that, white can take on f8, also forcing one of the black pieces moving backward. White is putting pressure to this pawn with his queen and knight, and black already needs to be very careful. Now, let's take it back. I love to summarize it by the statement, to take is a mistake, just because it's easy to remember that. Quite often, when you make an unprovoked exchange, meaning that you do trade something without any big reason, just for the sake of an exchange itself, you don't get any advantage. It is usually wrong exactly for this reason. It helps your opponent to go forward and make his position more active. This time, we'll let the pawn become more active, and we also help him activate his rook. Now, it's extremely annoying, actually, in this position, because if black just played another move, simply did not take there, but for example, move the queen away from danger by playing queen e6, then he's actually winning the game. Because think about this. Now we're threatening to capture this knight and win a pawn, and the knight can't really go back, because then we're gonna grab the bishop on e3 with check. So that would be really bad. Let's say if he moves the knight here, instead of taking it straight away, we can first play this in between check, and only then grab the knight, ending up with an extra piece, or at least a winning position. Now, if white does not move the knight away, then either you're going to play d4 with a double attack, or you'll take on e5. By the way, just to clear that doubt, by saying to take is a mistake, I'm not saying that you should never capture anything. Of course you do, if that gives you any advantage, if there is some reason to do that, right? So here, if you take on e5, let's say white plays, I don't know, whatever, let's say to avoid this double attack. If you take on e5 in this case, there is a clear reason to do that. You actually win a pawn. It's not just an exchange, because as a result of this, you snatch this pawn on e5, and that's phenomenal. If you can get any advantage, if you have some special idea behind that exchange, go ahead and do that. I'm just against exchanges which do not give you any advantage and in fact only worsen your situation, such as this thing that we have seen at the beginning. Let's have a look at another common situation, and we'll see another example when the golden rule applies perfectly. So here we go for this two knights game. White captures, and one of the ways for black to play is to go knight to d4. Quite a tricky move, actually. Now, how would you play here if you were white? Well, actually, there are a lot of moves that would make sense. You can play knight c3, bringing your knight out. You can play d3 to open up your bishop. You could castle, or you could play d6, and that's one of the most common moves, trying to renew the threat to this pawn on f7. So which one is correct? Not easy to answer, unless you understand the golden rule, of course. But let's first analyze the most aggressive move, pawn d6. And again, a lot of players play this just because it feels like white is almost winning the game. But then black takes here, and after knight takes f7, forking the queen and rook, feels like white is almost winning the game, but after queen to c6, all of a sudden it turns out that black comes with a lot of counter threats, and the white position is shaky. What can they do? Quite often they decide to bite the bullet and just grab the rook, but then queen takes g2 comes with this massive counter threat, and after rook f1, queen slides back with check. White needs to cover. Notice that we've got the knight that controls the square, so white can't cover with their queen, and if they use the bishop, it ends with this nasty smothered checkmate after knight to f3 mate. The bishop can't take because it's pinned. By the way, if not knight f3, black also could play knight takes c2, which would also win the game, either way. Notice that in both cases, the winning piece really is this knight on d4, and there is a reason for this. Let's recall the golden rule of chess. You want to go forward, you want to push your opponent's pieces back. And this is especially true if you see your opponent's piece on your half of the board, within the first 4 ranks, in other words, in your territory. If you see an intruder into this territory, you want to take actions against it straight away. And the correct move for white would be pawn to c3, solving this problem once and for all. If not, this piece will always control a whole lot of squares into your territory, making it harder for you to maneuver, and also it's going to facilitate various attacks from your opponent. Let's say white does not go for a d6 thing. Let's say you just play some trivial move, you castle, alright? And your opponent goes h6, the knight has to go. This is the only normal square, now bishop g4, and because of this pin and because of this knight on d4, now already the situation becomes unpleasant. So knight threatens to capture here, ruining the pawn shield around your king. Maybe e4 is coming to add one more attack to your knight. And now you need to be extremely careful and find proper defensive moves, which is very hard. So I don't want you to find yourself in positions like that when it's already very risky and dangerous. Now let's take it back. Let's instead just apply the golden rule and neutralize the piece which is on your half of the board as soon as it got there. So you play c3 straight away, and after the knight goes, now you're free to play whatever you like. And again, it's very difficult to blunder anything after that, because there are no pieces of your opponent on your side of the board, there's nothing they can possibly attack, and now you can play anything you want. You can play d3, you can castle, or any other normal move, and you're good. To sum things up, you want to go forward and you want to push your opponent's pieces back, such as in this position just a couple of moves ago. Especially if we see an opponent's piece on your side of the board, then you really need to take actions immediately and push it back, trade it off, or attack it and push it back, but either way you do not want to see it on your side of the board. And we also discussed one more special occasion of fundamentally the same rule, which is to take as a mistake. By the way, let me explain it once again, because many times people ask me about this, just to clarify. Let's get to some simple opening position like this. Now, should black take here? Well, definitely, because in this case, otherwise black would just lose this pawn, otherwise white would capture it. Therefore, black has a strong reason to make this exchange, and that is perfectly fine to do so. Now, after this trade, should black take here on d4? In fact, it's the most played move here in this position. And the answer is not at all. That would be a big mistake that would fall under the rule to take as a mistake. Now, there is no reason for black to do anything, actually. This knight on c6 is not in danger, it is super well defended, therefore black can ignore it and just do whatever they want, develop their pieces. If instead they take on d4, what's wrong with this move? Well, it helps white to move forward, to activate their position, and we do not want that. So if black takes here voluntarily, they only help white to bring the queen out to an active position where it puts pressure all around, and now it's already quite tough for black to realize how to even develop their pieces properly. Of course, feel free to let me know if you have any questions and comments down below, and also please don't forget that the special offers in honor of the Father's Day are gonna expire in several days, so if you wish me to help you to get better at chess, it's better to act now and click the link below the video in the description. All the best, take care.